Prime Minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, works alongside the Kenyan President, William Ruto, to speed up the arrival of the support forces for the national police. And Russia is ready to return immediately to the grain export deal, known as the Black Sea Initiative, if its conditions are met. And Niger's military junta announced the reopening of these borders with 5 neighboring nations. Hello from the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Brazil, the former deputy director of the National Intelligence Agency, Saulo Moura Era Cunha, testified before the first joint parliamentary commission investigating the coup actions of January the 8th. At the hearing, the then head of the Brazilian Intelligence Agency warned the former chief minister of the Institutional Security Office of the Lula government, General Edson Gonçalves Dias, for aggravating the risks of the takeover of the headquarters of the 3 branches of the government on January 8th. In declarations to parliamentarians, Cunha assured to have forwarded information about the arrival of about 105 buses that arrived in Brasilia with coup supporters and sympathizers of the former President Jair Bolsonaro. Social organizations and members of the international community in Colombia began a humanitarian caravan in the northeast of Antioquia to verify the population's complaints about human rights violations.
Different human rights violations, such as the massive displacement that took place on 29th and 30 July in the villages of Arenales, Jagua, and Rancho Quemado, due to the confrontations between the different groups operating in the region. We will be verifying each of these violations, including the murder of our comrade Carlos Roldan. We hope that after this caravan, we will be able to provide you with a big report and offer a big press conference on each of the violations that we find.
In this context, representatives of the Network of Brotherhood and Solidarity with Colombia, RedGere, assured that a delegation of 7 internationalists are accompanying the humanitarian caravan in order to make the human rights violations in the northeast of the department of Antioquia visible.
We are 7 internationalists, 7 foreigners from Chile, Spain, the Basque Country, and Canada. And the aim of our presence here is to raise awareness of the human rights violations occurring in this region over the last few months as a result of the intense paramilitary onslaught that has caused the displacement of significant parts of the population. And the objective is to see what state they are in and give testimony of what they tell us in order to draw attention to this difficult situation.
And the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, explained on Tuesday an opposition campaign using his country against Cuban vaccines against COVID-19. During his morning press conference at the National Palace, López Obrador answered a biased question from a journalist about whether there will be a multiplicity of laboratories when the vaccination period restarts so that people can freely choose which vaccine they want to use. AMLO recalled that the question has to do with the same policy that was used against Russian and Chinese vaccines to favor others from laboratories related to conservatives and, at the same time, denigrate and deny the scientific progress of those countries. Now they are doing the same with Cuban vaccines, but he affirmed that they also clash with the good results that qualify them among the best in the world. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, confirmed that he is in contact with the President of Kenya, William Ruto, to formalize the advances that will accelerate the arrival of the support forces to the national police. Henry assured that the President of Kenya ratified that in the next few days, the reconnaissance and evaluation mission will arrive in the Caribbean country in the midst of the controversy due to the rejection generated by the Haitian sectors and the international community that evaluate the mission as a foreign intervention. According to President Ruto, the African nation will deploy 150 officials who will be under the orders of the United Nations. On the other hand, the government of Bahamas said in a statement they welcomed the decision of Kenya and committed 150 people to support the effort if the United Nations authorizes the force. Now we move on to the United States. There, the former president, Donald Trump, has been indicted by a federal court grand jury as part of the investigation into alleged attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. The charges include conspiracy to defraud, witness tampering, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against citizens' rights. The charging document alleges that Trump conspired with 6 other unnamed individuals to undermine the results of the 2020 election. The former president has been called to appear in federal court on Thursday. The Republican candidate's press service has called the allegations an attempt by the Biden administration to intervene in the 2024 campaign results. Let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. Russia is ready to return to grain export deals, so-called Black Sea Initiative, without delay. Moscow has formulated 5 conditions for the extension of the food pact. Among them are reconnecting its agricultural bank, Roshozbank, to the SWIFT system, resuming shipments of agricultural machinery, spare parts, and maintenance, lifting the ban on access to ports, reactivating the Togliatti-Odessa ammonia pipeline, and unblocking foreign assets and accounts of Russian companies involved in the production and transport of food and fertilizers. On 22nd July 2022, Russia, Turkey, and the United Nations signed an agreement to unblock the export of grain and fertilizer from Ukraine through the Black Sea, while the Ukrainian government signed a similar document with Ankara and the United Nations representatives. In Europe, tensions grow between Belarus and Poland after Warsaw accused the Minsk forces of allegedly violating its airspace, an act rejected by the Belarusian authorities. The complaint was issued by the Polish Foreign Ministry after 2 Belarusian helicopters allegedly violated Polish airspace, an incident which for Warsaw is yet another element of the escalation of tensions on the border between the 2 countries. For its part, the Belarusian Ministry of Defense described the accusations as preposterous, and further claimed that the Polish military and political leadership is once again seeking to justify the build-up of forces and the equipment near the Belarusian border. On Tuesday, the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said that the plans to expedite the establishment of a contracted army using PMC Wagner fighters billeted in Belarus as the backbone of these forces. At the same time, the Belarusian leader stressed that his country is not going to wage war. Belarusian Defense Minister Viktor Krenin said earlier that contracted soldiers account for some 60% of the Belarusian army. A 2-year contract can be signed by either those who never served in the army or those taken in for compulsory military service. According to earlier reports, the Belarusian Defense Ministry said, and the command of the Wagner Group elaborated a plan for the cooperation for the near future. Wagner structures and the units are already involved in training missions. The Belarusian side has not disclosed how many Wagner fighters are staying on its territory. On Tuesday, the G20 Ministerial Conference on Women's Empowerment began in India. The first day of the summit was attended by more than 300 people, including international delegates from the G20 countries, as well as 4 guest countries and 8 international organizations. Participants will discuss until Thursday, August the 3rd, on education as a revolutionary path to women's empowerment, strategies for winning and equity and economics, as well as building a partnership to promote women's leadership at all levels. The deliberations will be reflected in a summary to be given as recommendations to the G20 leaders who will meet on September 9th to 10 in New Delhi. And also on Tuesday, Indian authorities imposed a curfew, suspended internet service, and had ordered schools and colleges to remain shut after deadly communal clashes spread to Gurgaon city, some 30 kilometers from New Delhi. Local news reported the violence began on Monday afternoon when Hindus and Muslims clashed in Haryana's Nuh district during a religious procession by a Hindu nationalist group. 2 officers and 4 civilians were killed in the violence, and dozens of cars were set on fire. However, there were no reports of fresh violence from either place on Tuesday. In Pakistan, Chinese Vice President or Premier He Lifan arrived in Islamabad to mark the 10th anniversary of the enormous economic plan that it is the cornerstone of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. Since it started in 2013, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor has seen tens of billions of dollars funneled into massive transport, energy, and infrastructure projects. In recent years, Beijing has been one of Islamabad's most reliable foreign partners, readily providing financial assistance to bail out its often struggling neighbor. Beijing granted Pakistan a 2-year rollover on a $2.4 billion loan, giving the debt-saddled nation much-needed breathing space as it tackles a balance of payments crisis. An IMF report last year said China and its commercial banks held about 30% of Pakistan's total external debt.
When CPAC came to Pakistan's rescue. And as you said, that some of the projects were completed in a record period of time. This was under the joint leadership of President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Now we are entering the second phase of CPAC, which is even more interesting and extremely helpful in promoting investments, progress and prosperity in Pakistan and also in the region. This is the time.
Now we move on to other topics. On Wednesday, the Meteorological Service of Beijing confirmed the heaviest rains in 140 years. One of the monitoring stations recorded 744.8 millimeters, the highest rainfall since 1891, when a record 609 millimeters were recorded. These are the consequences of Dogsuri, the storm that has already been described as a super typhoon that hit China from south to north. The capital's authorities explained that its surroundings are usually dry, so they were saturated by such a large amount of water. And now we have a second short break coming up. But before, we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, and there you will be able to rewatch our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We have a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Israeli occupying forces killed another Palestinian teenager. The extrajudicial killing of the 15-year-old Mohammad Farid al-Zahir raises the number of underage Palestinians killed to 39. The facts were reported this Tuesday in the Cisjordanian city of Al Jalil in Hebron. The Israeli troops confirmed the death of the young man, assuring that he tried to attack one of their agents with a knife. The Palestinian Ministry of Health certified the death and denounced that once again the troops delayed medical assistance by blocking the passage of ambulances. In addition, authorities reported another 94 wounded from the last incursion of the occupying forces. Niger's military junta announced on Tuesday night the reopening of its borders with 5 neighboring nations. The coup leader, General Abdulrahman Tishini, declared on national television that he had taken the decision by decree to reopen the border crossings with Algeria, follows Burkina, Chad, Libya, and Mali from Tuesday. Shani appeared last Wednesday night for the first time since the coup d'etat to announce the removal from power of the Nigerian president, Mohamed Bazoum, and the closure of the country's borders hours after the presidential guard detained the president. This action was motivated by the deepening economic and security crisis in the country, which is facing an increase in the operations of the branches of the terrorist groups Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. In this context, France prepared to fly out its citizens from Niger 6 days after a coup that overthrew the president Mohamed Bazoum. After hostile crowds gathered on Sunday outside the French embassy in Niger, accusing France of plotting to intervene militarily, Paris decided it would withdraw its citizens and has sent 3 planes to the capital Niamey, and the first flight has evacuated 262 people on board, over the 600 French nationals in Niger. France has also indicated that it is willing to take other European nationals on board the evacuation flights. Likewise, Italy and Spain had all announced evacuations from Niger. On Monday, the Special Representative for West Africa and the Sahel, Leonardo Santos Simao, informed that the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, are preparing themselves to use force if necessary in Niger.
The summit gave 1 week to the military junta to hand back power to President Bazoum. If this doesn't happen after that week, then other options are on the making, including military intervention, including use of force. That's what they said. That period, in my view, is try to give time for a peaceful settlement to take place. So, well, it's difficult because the situation is very fluid. What I know is that different member states are preparing themselves to use force if necessary. But as I said, the situation is fluid, but there are these efforts of find a peaceful solution for the problem. Everybody is giving priority to these efforts.
And for an in-depth look at the situation in Niger, we interview Kembale Musavuli, an analyst at the Congo-Kinshasa Research Center, to understand the reasons behind the coup, which has been broadly backed by locals in the streets.
In the Sahel region, French interest in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger is mineral resources, natural resources. But the people of the region are saying, this is not the Berlin Conference anymore. We are in 2023. African people must control their land. They must control their resources. They must exploit those resources for the benefit of the masses. And you can see that in the protest. There was a coup in Niger, a military coup. The leaders have spoken. The people could have said, we're not in support of the coup. But why are thousands of people in the streets? So the people of West Africa are very clear about imperialism. They are very clear about French imperialism. And they're saying no to imperialism, and they are saying yes to a multipolar world. This is why you're seeing the Russian flag in this protest, where African people, where Nigerian people are saying that we do not want to stay connected to the West. We want to have partners who look at us with dignity, we treat us with respect, to build a new world that we want to see.
And the Congo-Kinshasa Research Center analyst also stated that, as we are in a new world, African peoples are raising their voices and will be the powerful force that will move the African continent and humanity forward.
Territories of the regions are taking power, but they are listening to people. In the case of Mali, in the case of Burkina Faso, in the case of Niger, that the rhetoric they are actually sharing connects with the aspirations of the people. Will that continue for these leaders to be able to listen to the people? the struggle must continue, right? The history of humanity is a history of class struggle. So the people of these countries, even though they have strong military forces taking control of the country, they must continue to engage with these leaders so that their aspirations are actually met. But we are in a new world. Who could have thought that in 2023, that a nation in Africa could ask the French to close their embassy and to take out their soldiers? We've seen that in Burkina Faso. We've seen that in Mali. And it's time for Africa to rise up. It's time for Africa to unite, as Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are uniting now. And as we unite, we'll be the mighty force that will transform not just the African continent, but the African world and also humanity.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.